The frantic, strained voice cut through the static, a harrowing plea that instantly seized the dispatcher's attention. "Please, don't send the police. Oh God, please don't send them." A momentary pause, thick with confusion. Then the calm, practiced voice of the 911 dispatcher. "Ma'am, what are you talking about? You just called for emergency assistance." The caller's breath hitched, a sound of pure terror, as if the request itself was a betrayal. In the chaotic world of 911, dispatchers are rigorously trained for every conceivable emergency. They navigate the raw edges of human suffering, fear, and desperation with an unwavering resolve. But nothing, not a single simulated scenario nor a real-life crisis, had prepared them for a plea quite like this. It was a desperate call, not for help to arrive, but for help to be actively withheld. The chilling paradox hung heavy in the air. Why would someone, in their moment of greatest need, beg for the very authorities designed to protect them to stay away? The question echoed, an unsettling prelude to a narrative far more intricate and dangerous than any simple domestic disturbance. The call had originated just moments earlier, a blurred report from a woman identified as Sarah. Her initial words were disjointed, trembling, hinting at a domestic dispute, a situation spiraling out of control within the walls of her own home. The dispatcher, a seasoned professional named Officer Miller, had initially processed the information with the usual efficiency, already logging the address and preparing to dispatch units. But then came the sudden, fervent retraction, the desperate plea that had changed everything. Officer Miller, accustomed to the immediate urgency of crisis, felt a growing unease. Sarah's voice, though fraught with fear, carried an unusual undercurrent, a hesitancy that went beyond mere distress. It was as if she were wrestling with an invisible tormentor, her words caught between two opposing forces. "Ma'am, you reported a domestic disturbance. Can you confirm your address? We need to send officers to ensure your safety." Officer Miller's voice remained steady, a beacon of calm amidst the caller's rising panic. But Sarah's response was not a confirmation. It was a renewed, frantic insistence. "No, no, please, don't send them. He'll know." Her words were choked, barely audible above a ragged sob. The contradiction was staggering. A woman in distress, seemingly in danger, yet vehemently rejecting the very intervention she had initially sought. It defied logic, shattered protocol, and ignited a prickling sense of alarm within Officer Miller. The situation was escalating, not in terms of visible violence, but in the chilling complexity of Sarah's unspoken fears. Officer Miller pressed, her voice firm but empathetic. "Ma'am, who will know? What are you afraid of? We need more information to help you." A long, agonizing silence stretched across the line, punctuated only by Sarah's shallow, rapid breathing. Then, a whispered utterance, so faint it was almost lost in the digital ether. "It's him. Mark. He has secrets. Terrible secrets." The words were barely a breath, yet they carried the weight of something profoundly sinister, a dark revelation teetering on the edge of disclosure. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, the dispatcher now leaning forward, her senses sharpened, knowing this was no ordinary call. The plea to withhold help had transformed into a desperate cry for understanding, a fragile thread connecting Sarah to a world of unseen dangers and unspoken truths. The whispered confession, "It's him. Mark. He has secrets. Terrible secrets," hung in the air, a chilling prelude to the depths of Sarah's terror. Her voice, already frayed, now trembled with an escalating anxiety that transcended mere fear. It was the sound of a soul trapped, teetering on the edge of an abyss. Officer Miller, her instincts screaming, felt the weight of an unspoken narrative pressing down on her. This was no simple domestic dispute. This was a labyrinth of hidden torment, a silent battle waged within the confines of Sarah's own home. Each ragged breath Sarah took resonated with a story far more complex, far more sinister than any initial report could convey. Officer Miller, despite the growing sense of dread, maintained her composure, her voice a steady anchor in Sarah's storm. "Sarah, please, you need to tell me everything. I can't help you if I don't know what's happening. What kind of secrets? Where is Mark now?" The dispatcher's persistence was a delicate balance between extracting crucial information and not overwhelming the caller, whose fragile grip on coherence seemed to be slipping. Sarah let out a small, choked sound, a mixture of a gasp and a sob, as if the very act of voicing her fears was a physical pain. Then, through the haze of her distress, a crucial detail emerged. A small, dark seed of information that planted itself firmly in Officer Miller's mind. "The basement," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible, laced with a fresh wave of terror. He keeps a box there, a small, metal box." The words were disjointed, fragmented, yet they painted a vivid picture of something hidden, something forbidden, something that held the key to Mark's terrible secrets. The mention of the box, coupled with the basement, ignited a new alarm bell in Officer Miller's mind. Basements were often places of concealment, of things best left undiscovered. Mark, the looming figure in Sarah's life, began to take shape in Officer Miller's imagination, not as a husband, but as an oppressor. Sarah's brief, ominous references painted a portrait of a man whose control was absolute, whose presence was suffocating. He was the architect of her isolation, the silent warden of her fear. His name, spoken with such trepidation, carried the weight of countless unseen cruelties, a life meticulously orchestrated to keep Sarah confined, both physically and emotionally. He had systematically dismantled her connections to the outside world, leaving her utterly dependent, utterly alone, and utterly terrified. The insidious nature of his control meant that even calling for help felt like a betrayal, a dangerous act of defiance that could unleash unimaginable retribution. Sarah's internal conflict was palpable, a war waged between the primal fear of Mark and the desperate, burning need to finally reveal the truth that had been gnawing at her soul. Every word she uttered was a testament to this struggle, a push and pull between self-preservation and the yearning for liberation. The silence that followed her mention of the box stretched into an agonizing eternity, punctuated only by the faint, static hum of the phone line. Officer Miller held her breath, listening intently, sensing Sarah was not just struggling for words, but also listening for something else, something within her own home. Suddenly, a sharp, audible gasp tore through the silence, raw and involuntary. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated shock, of sudden realization, or perhaps of immediate danger. The line crackled, and for a terrifying second, Officer Miller feared it had been disconnected. Her heart pounded in her chest, a primal fear seizing her. What had Sarah heard? What had she seen? The gasp was followed by a frantic, scrambling sound, as if Sarah was moving quickly, desperately, trying to evade detection. The connection remained, but the sudden shift in atmosphere was undeniable. The fear had intensified, becoming immediate, tangible. Sarah was no longer merely recounting her terror. She was living it in that very moment, with Officer Miller as her only witness. Officer Miller's attempts to re-engage Sarah were immediate and urgent, her voice laced with a controlled intensity that belied the surge of panic she felt. "Sarah? Sarah, are you there? What was that sound? Are you safe?" The dispatcher's questions tumbled out, each word a desperate attempt to bridge the sudden chasm of fear that had opened on the line. She sensed an immediate, palpable danger, a shift from simmering dread to active threat. The silence that followed felt heavy, oppressive, filled with the unseen terror that had seized Sarah. Miller's mind raced, picturing possible scenarios. each more chilling than the last. Had Mark returned? Had he heard Sarah speaking? The possibilities were endless, and each one tightened the knot of anxiety in Miller's stomach. Then, a faint whisper, barely audible over the line's static, broke through. He was coming up the stairs, Sarah breathed, her voice a thin thread of sound, strained with effort and fear. I thought he heard me. I hid. The revelation began to unfold in hushed, fragmented sentences, each word a precious, dangerous secret being unearthed. Sarah explained, her narrative punctuated by quick, shallow breaths, how Mark had systematically woven a web of deceit around her, isolating her from friends, family, and any semblance of an independent life. He had convinced her that everyone else was against her, that only he truly understood and protected her. It was a classic pattern of abuse, but one executed with a chilling precision that left Sarah utterly alone, utterly dependent. She spoke of the subtle manipulations, the gaslighting that made her question her own sanity, the slow erosion of her self-worth. He'd tell me I was crazy if I ever thought about leaving, that no one would believe me, she confessed, a tremor running through her voice. He'd control my phone, my emails, even my clothes. He made me feel like I was nothing without him. These were not just confessions. They were fragments of a life meticulously designed to keep her trapped, a psychological prison built brick by brick with fear and control. The why behind her desperate plea, the reason she had called 911 only to beg them away, slowly began to emerge, chilling Officer Miller to the core. Sarah's voice dropped to an almost inaudible whisper, forcing Miller to strain to catch every word. He has something on someone powerful, she revealed, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. Incriminating evidence. Something that could ruin them. He uses it to control them, just like he controls me. The admission hung in the air, transforming the domestic disturbance into something far more sinister, a conspiracy reaching into the upper echelons of power. Sarah continued, her voice gaining a fragile strength, a desperate resolve. I have been trying to get to it, trying to find it. He keeps it in that box, in the basement. He thinks I don't know, but I've been watching, planning. The shocking twist hit Officer Miller with the force of a physical blow. Sarah wanted the police to come. Not for her protection, not in the traditional sense of a domestic violence call, but as a Trojan horse. She wanted them there to expose Mark, to bring down his carefully constructed empire of blackmail and control. I need you to come, Sarah stated, her voice now firm, resolute, a stark contrast to the trembling fear from moments before. But not for me. Not just for me. I need you to come and find that box. I need you to expose him. All of it. He's not just hurting me. He's hurting others. And he's protected because of what he knows. If you come, if you find that box, it will all come crashing down. The implications were staggering, transforming a routine domestic call into a high-stakes mission, a desperate gambit to expose corruption and deliver justice, not just for Sarah, but for all those Mark had manipulated and controlled. Officer Miller felt a cold shiver run down her spine. This was no ordinary call. This was a plea for a revolution, orchestrated by a woman who had finally found her courage in the face of absolute terror. Sarah, with a newfound steel in her voice, began to meticulously outline her perilous strategy. Her words, though spoken with urgency, carried an almost clinical precision, betraying months, perhaps years, of careful observation and desperate planning. She explained that the initial 911 call was merely the first domino, a calculated diversion designed to draw police presence to the house, but not in the manner Mark would anticipate. She needed the chaos, the unexpected intrusion, to create a window of opportunity. Her plan was to use the arrival of the uniform officers as a shield, a momentary disruption, during which she could retrieve the crucial evidence from the basement. It was a dangerous gamble, one that hinged entirely on her ability to act swiftly and Officer Miller's willingness to deviate from standard procedure. Officer Miller listened, her mind racing, grappling with the sheer audacity and the profound ethical labyrinth Sarah was constructing. The dispatcher was trained to protect, to de-escalate, to follow protocols. Yet Sarah was asking her to become an accomplice in a high-stakes, unsanctioned operation, one that could easily go sideways, endangering Sarah, the responding officers, and potentially Miller's own career. The line blurred between distress call and strategic infiltration, between victim and mastermind. The weight of Sarah's request pressed down on Miller, a heavy burden of responsibility and moral ambiguity. The stakes, Sarah emphasized, were astronomically high. Her life, certainly, but also the lives and reputations of countless others who had been ensnared by Mark's insidious web. She spoke of the chilling precision with which Mark operated, his ability to twist situations, to manipulate perceptions, and to ultimately escape accountability. If her plan failed, she was convinced he would not only destroy the evidence, but also exact a terrifying retribution against her. This was not merely about escaping an abusive husband. It was about dismantling a criminal enterprise from within, a desperate act of self-preservation that transcended personal safety to touch upon a broader sense of justice. Then came the bombshell, the name that solidified the gravity of the situation. "He's blackmailing Senator Maxwell," Sarah whispered, the name hanging in the air like a poisonous vapor. The revelation sent a jolt through Officer Miller. Senator Maxwell, a prominent figure with significant political influence whose public image was meticulously cultivated. The implications were staggering, transforming a domestic dispute into a potential political scandal that could rock the state. This wasn't just about a local abuser. This was about systemic corruption, power wielded in the shadows, and the terrifying vulnerability of those who dared to challenge it. Sarah then meticulously described the location of the box. "It's in the basement, behind the old furnace, tucked away in a false panel," she detailed, her voice a low, urgent murmur. "It's a wooden box, antique-looking with a brass clasp. Inside, there are documents, ledgers, encrypted drives, and a series of audio recordings. He thinks he's clever, hiding it in plain sight. But I've watched him." She painted a vivid picture of the basement, describing specific landmarks, dusty shelves, and even the faint smell of mildew, ensuring that anyone searching would know precisely where to look. The contents, she assured Miller, were irrefutable proof of Mark's blackmail scheme and Senator Maxwell's complicity. Finally, Sarah delivered her most critical instruction, a testament to her intimate knowledge of Mark's connections and the local power structure. "You cannot send the local precinct," she insisted, her voice sharp with conviction. "Mark has friends there, connections. He's bought loyalties. They'll tip him off. Or worse, they'll make the evidence disappear." She paused, then continued. "You need to send a special unit, Detective Carter's task force. They operate independently. They're not beholden to anyone in this city. Tell them it's a high-priority, sensitive case involving corruption at the highest levels. Tell them I have information on Senator Maxwell. They'll understand." It was a calculated risk, a desperate plea to circumvent the very system designed to protect in order to expose a deeper, more insidious corruption. Officer Miller knew with chilling certainty that Sarah was right. This had to be handled with extreme delicacy and absolute secrecy. Officer Miller, her mind racing with the gravity of Sarah's instructions, immediately sprang into action. The urgency in Sarah's voice was palpable, a chilling echo that propelled Miller to bypass standard protocol. She knew sending a patrol car from the local precinct would be a catastrophic mistake, unraveling Sarah's entire, meticulously planned gamble. With practiced efficiency, Miller discreetly signaled her supervisor, a veteran dispatcher named Reynolds, conveying the need for an immediate, high-level intervention without disclosing the full, explosive details over the open channel. Reynolds, sensing the unusual intensity in Miller's demeanor, nodded curtly, already moving to initiate the necessary contacts. While Reynolds worked the phones, Miller remained tethered to Sarah, her voice a calming anchor amidst the rising storm. "Sarah, I've got the ball rolling. Detective Carter's task force is being notified. They understand the urgency," Miller reassured her, though the words felt inadequate against the backdrop of the immense danger Sarah faced. Just as Miller finished speaking, a distant, ominous sound permeated the phone line, the distinct creak of a front door opening, followed by heavy footsteps echoing through what sounded like a hallway. Sarah's breath hitched, a sharp, involuntary gasp that cut through the silence. "He's back," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible, laced with a fresh wave of terror. Miller's heart pounded in her chest. This was the moment of truth, the razor's edge upon which Sarah's entire plan teetered. Without missing a beat, Sarah's quick thinking kicked in. A sudden, strained argument erupted on her end of the line, a masterful improvisation designed to create a diversion. "No, Michael, I told you I don't want to talk about it!" Sarah exclaimed, her voice deliberately loud, feigning anger and frustration. "You always do this. Just leave me alone." It was a desperate theatrical performance, hoping to convince Mark that she was merely having a heated phone call with someone else, an innocuous domestic squabble that wouldn't raise suspicion. Meanwhile, a flurry of activity erupted at the dispatch center. Reynolds, having made contact, was now relaying Sarah's information, albeit cautiously, to Detective Carter's team. The specific address, the mention of Senator Maxwell, and the crucial detail about the basement box, all were meticulously passed on. Patrol units, specialized and discreet, were already being mobilized, their sirens silent, their approach calibrated for maximum surprise. Time, however, was a cruel mistress, ticking away with agonizing slowness for Sarah. Every second felt like an hour, every breath a potential betrayal. On the line, Mark's voice, deep and resonant, became faintly discernible. "Who are you talking to, Sarah?" he questioned, a predatory edge to his tone. Sarah's fabricated argument intensified, her voice trembling slightly, but holding firm. "It's none of your business, Mark. Just leave me alone," she retorted, her performance convincing enough to buy her precious seconds. Miller could hear the subtle shift in Mark's footsteps, moving closer, then pausing, as if trying to discern the nature of the conversation. It was a near miss, a breath-holding moment where Sarah's quick wit narrowly averted immediate detection. The tension was almost unbearable. Miller held her breath, listening intently, her imagination painting a vivid, terrifying picture of Sarah, trapped, performing for her captor. Then, a sudden frantic whisper from Sarah, filled with a renewed sense of panic. "He's coming. He's coming down the hall. I have to hide it." A desperate scramble, a muffled thud, and then, with a jarring abruptness that sent a jolt of ice through Officer Miller's veins, the line went dead. The silence that followed was deafening, a stark, terrifying void where Sarah's voice had just been. Miller stared at the flashing red light on her console, a symbol of the connection severed, the fate of Sarah now hanging precariously in the balance. The abrupt silence that followed the disconnected call sent a cold wave of dread through Officer Miller. Her fingers flew across the console, frantically attempting to re-establish contact with Sarah, but the line remained stubbornly dead. A knot tightened in her stomach. Had Mark discovered her? Had Sarah been caught mid-act? The uncertainty was agonizing, each passing second stretching into an eternity. Her mind raced, replaying Sarah's last frantic whisper. "He's coming. I have to hide it." Miller could only hope that Sarah had managed to conceal herself and the damning evidence before Mark reached her. Meanwhile, a carefully orchestrated ballet of flashing blue and red lights, sans sirens, converged on the quiet suburban street. The patrol units, dispatched with the utmost discretion, pulled up to Sarah's house. Officer Ramirez and Sergeant Davies, leading the small, specialized team, approached the front door cautiously, weapons at the ready. The house was deceptively dark, an eerie calm hanging in the air that belied the storm brewing within. There was no visible sign of forced entry, no shattered windows, just the silent, stoic facade of a seemingly ordinary home. Sergeant Davies rapped sharply on the door. After a tense moment, it creaked open, revealing Mark. He stood there, a tall, imposing figure with a carefully constructed veneer of confusion and irritation. His eyes, however, darted nervously between the officers and the interior of his home. "Can I help you, officers?" he asked, his voice smooth, almost too calm, but a subtle tremor in his hand betrayed his composure. "We received a call concerning a domestic disturbance," Sergeant Davies stated, his gaze unwavering, taking in Mark's slightly disheveled appearance and the faint, almost imperceptible scent of stale alcohol. Mark scoffed, a dismissive wave of his hand. "A domestic disturbance? That's ridiculous. My wife and I were just having a disagreement. A private matter, nothing for the police." He attempted to block their view into the house, but Ramirez, quick and perceptive, had already caught a glimpse of the living room, a scattered magazine, a half-empty glass, but no immediate signs of a struggle. "Sir, we need to speak with your wife to ensure her safety," Ramirez stated firmly, stepping past Mark into the entryway. Mark's demeanor shifted from feigned indignation to thinly veiled obstruction. "She's resting. She doesn't wish to be disturbed," he insisted, though his eyes continued to betray his unease, flicking towards the far end of the hallway. The officers exchanged a glance. Mark's evasiveness only heightened their suspicions. They began a systematic yet discreet search of the main floor, their movements precise, their senses alert for any sign of Sarah or distress. Each room was empty. Each closet yielded nothing but clothing. Each shadow held no hidden figure. The house felt cavernous, an empty shell, amplifying the tension. As they moved towards the back of the house, a heavy, bolted door caught Sergeant Davies' attention. It was a sturdy, unassuming door, but its reinforced lock and the subtle, almost imperceptible vibrations emanating from behind it spoke volumes. "What's behind this door, sir?" Davies asked, his voice low and steady, pointing to the basement entrance. Mark's face paled, his composure finally cracking. "Just storage. Nothing important," he stammered, trying to interpose himself between the officers and the door. "My private space. You have no right to enter." But the officers knew better. Mark's desperate attempt to guard the door was a glaring red flag. They heard it then. A faint, almost imperceptible scraping sound, followed by a barely audible thump from beyond the heavy wood. It was a sound that, to the trained ears of the officers, could only mean one thing. Someone was alive and trapped on the other side. A glimmer of hope pierced through the thick veil of uncertainty. Sarah was still here. Sergeant Davies' eyes met Ramirez's, a silent understanding passing between them. The faint sounds from behind the basement door confirmed their deepest fears and ignited a renewed sense of urgency. Mark's frantic attempts to block their path were futile. "Sir, we have a reasonable suspicion that someone inside may be in distress," Davies stated, his voice now devoid of any negotiation. "Step aside, or we will be forced to restrain you." Mark, seeing the unwavering resolve in the officers' faces, hesitated for a fraction of a second, his defiance crumbling. Ramirez moved swiftly, pushing past him to the door. The lock was robust, clearly designed to keep something in or out. Ramirez, a man of considerable strength, braced himself and delivered a powerful kick near the latch. The old wood groaned in protest, but the door held. Davies joined him, and together, with a synchronized, forceful shove, the heavy door splintered open with a resounding crack, revealing a steep, dimly lit stairwell descending into darkness. The air that wafted up was damp and cool, carrying a faint metallic scent. As the officers descended cautiously, their flashlights cut through the gloom, revealing a cluttered, dusty basement. Shadows danced across forgotten furniture, stacks of boxes, and cobweb-draped machinery. Mark, now visibly distraught, remained at the top of the stairs, his face a mask of defeat and anger. "You have no right!" he bellowed, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. But the officers ignored him, their attention fixed on their mission. They quickly scanned the immediate area, their eyes darting, searching for any sign of Sarah. Then, tucked away behind a stack of old tires and a workbench covered in tools, they saw her. Sarah was huddled in a corner, her knees drawn to her chest, her face pale and streaked with dirt and tears. In her trembling hands, she clutched a small, nondescript wooden box, its surface worn smooth with age. She looked up at them, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and relief, a silent plea for help etched onto her exhausted features. "Sarah, are you all right?" Davies asked, his voice gentle despite the tension of the moment. She nodded, unable to speak, her grip tightening on the box. Ramirez moved to her side, offering a reassuring hand. As she slowly uncurled herself, the officers noticed a faint bruise blooming on her temple, a stark testament to the struggle she had endured. "The box," Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse, her gaze fixed on the wooden container. "It's all in here." She carefully handed it to Davies, her hands still shaking. With a sense of profound gravity, Davies took the box. It was surprisingly heavy. He unlatched the simple clasp and lifted the lid. The flashlight beam illuminated the contents. Neatly organized stacks of documents, a small digital recorder, and a collection of printed photographs. He pulled out the top document. It was a meticulously detailed ledger, filled with dates, names, and dollar amounts, all pointing to illicit transactions. The photographs showed clandestine meetings, blurry but identifiable faces, and compromising situations. The recordings, when played back later, would reveal hushed conversations about bribes, kickbacks, and political favors. The evidence was damning, unequivocally linking Mark to a vast network of corruption, and, crucially, implicating the powerful Senator Thompson at the very apex of the scheme. Mark, having finally descended the stairs, saw the contents of the box, his face contorted, a mixture of rage and terror. "No! Those are lies! Fabrications!" he shrieked, lunging forward as if to snatch the evidence. But Ramirez quickly intercepted him, pinning him against the wall. Mark struggled, his earlier composure completely shattered, replaced by a desperate, animalistic fury. "She made it all up. She's crazy!" he screamed, his accusations falling on deaf ears. The officers had seen enough. The sheer volume and detail of the evidence, coupled with Mark's frantic, transparent denial, left no room for doubt. Mark's reign of manipulation and deceit had come to its ignominious end. As they cuffed him, reciting his rights, Sarah watched, a silent witness to the downfall of her tormentor. The basement, once a place of fear and hidden secrets, was now the site of a profound unveiling. The first step towards justice had been taken, and the investigation, now exponentially larger, would inevitably reach far beyond the confines of that quiet suburban home, threatening to unravel the carefully constructed world of a powerful man. The aftermath of the basement confrontation left Sarah emotionally and physically drained, yet a fragile sense of victory began to coalesce within her. Days blurred into weeks, as she navigated the labyrinthine processes of police interviews, legal consultations, and the chilling realization of the danger she had faced. Her bruises healed, but the deeper wounds of betrayal and fear lingered, slowly mending with each sunrise. She found solace in the quiet strength she had discovered within herself, a resilience forged in the crucible of Mark's manipulation. The initial shock gave way to a profound sense of liberation, a quiet understanding that her life, once a cage, was now her own to rebuild. Officer Miller, the steady voice on the other end of the line, proved to be an invaluable anchor during this tumultuous period. Her calm demeanor and unwavering belief in Sarah had been the catalyst for the entire operation. Miller's detailed notes, her immediate understanding of Sarah's coded pleas, and her swift, decisive actions had not only saved Sarah, but had also ensured the integrity of the crucial evidence. Her professionalism and empathy stood as a testament to the quiet heroes of the emergency services, often unseen but always vital. Miller's impact extended beyond the immediate crisis. She connected Sarah with victim support services, offering guidance and a sympathetic ear, ensuring Sarah was not alone in her journey toward recovery. The fallout from the scandal was immediate and seismic. Senator Thompson, once a towering figure of political power, found his carefully constructed empire crumbling around him. The evidence from Mark's box, ledgers, recordings, and photographs painted an undeniable picture of corruption, bribery, and abuse of power. News headlines screamed of the politician's downfall, his public image shattered, his career irrevocably ruined. Investigations spiraled outward, implicating other figures within his network, exposing a festering underbelly of illicit dealings that had long remained hidden. The public outcry was immense, a demand for accountability echoing through the halls of power, leading to sweeping reforms and a renewed scrutiny of political ethics. For Sarah, the path forward was not without its challenges, but it was illuminated by a burgeoning hope. She moved to a new city, embracing the anonymity and the fresh start it offered. She enrolled in college, pursuing a degree she had always dreamed of but had been denied by Mark's controlling nature. She found joy in simple things: a morning walk, a shared laugh with new friends, the quiet satisfaction of learning. Her courage had not only dismantled a criminal enterprise, but had also freed her from a personal prison. She learned to trust again, to open her heart to genuine connections, slowly healing the scars of her past. Her voice, once a whisper of fear, now spoke with newfound confidence and clarity. The entire ordeal served as a powerful testament to the extraordinary power of a single, desperate 911 call. It was a stark reminder that even in the most dire circumstances, a quiet act of courage could unravel a vast web of deceit, bringing justice to light. Sarah's story became a symbol of resilience, a beacon for others trapped in similar situations, demonstrating that speaking out, even when terrifying, could ignite a chain reaction leading to profound change. Her initial plea, "Please, don't send the police," had morphed into a desperate cry for help that, in its own paradoxical way, ultimately led to the very intervention she needed. It was a story of hidden truths brought into the harsh light of day, of courage found in the face of overwhelming fear, and of the enduring, transformative power of one woman's unwavering fight for justice. The lasting impact of her actions resonated far beyond her small suburban home, echoing a timeless message that even the smallest voice can shake the foundations of corruption and pave the way for a new beginning.